025. The time is 22 minutes past 8, and that can mean only one thing. There are very many F1 centric thread which we need to pull. Safak, James, Crackosaurus, aka George. So we in the first instance talk about Oscar Piastri, and shortly thereafter we'll talk about some rules and regs. Bring back V10s. I think not. Stefano Domenicali. It is active aero that all of the drivers are feeding back on in a way that is nothing less than negative. Alex Albon has talked about it too, so we'll talk about Alex Albon and his circumstance at Williams and a potential move back to the balls that are red. And as your final, your main event, we'll talk about Guenther Steiner being fake potentially, takeover rumours, Tech 3, MotoGP. In the first instance, however, let's talk about lap sled. I'm trying to normalise for anomalies with a view to forward forecast. Who's going to win the Drivers' Championship? Let me show you this. I happened across this and I thought it was quite interesting. Of course, to win yourself 25 points is not who leads the race for 99% of it. You've got to lead the final lap right. But I think this is indicative of something that not too many people are talking about. In 2025, with round 14 in the books, Oscar Piastri has led 320 races, 320. That's 90 laps clear of his teammate Lando Norris. And this is where it gets techie, because you've got to normalise for these things. I've said on a gazillion occasions, and I will reiterate, Lando, by dint of the recent Grand Prix and his performances, his outsized performances, is lucky to only be 9 points adrift of Oscar Piastri. Let me tell you what I mean. Austria, Hungary, they're meant to be his circuits. Lando, aka Dustin from Stranger Things, is always going to go well around there. Low minimum speed turns, that's his forte. But when we start talking about what's coming up, if we are playing forecasting games, they are all high to medium speed turns at Baku, at Kota. They are all high speed turns. Zandvoort, similar story. Into the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. So how do you think, therefore, Oscar Piastri is going to manage around those tracks? I think here you can take this one to the bank and hold my feet to the flames. F1 boy, Sir John Perry. I think Oscar Piastri will end up, when all is said and done, after race 24, Abu Dhabi 2025, I think he's going to be more than 25 points adrift of Lando Norris. To the good, by the way. Yeah, there it is. I've said it, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Oscar Piastri will win this championship going away by dint of his mental fortitude and his ability to execute, optimise and deliver upon his not insubstantial potential in a way that his opposing driver, his teammate Lando Norris, simply cannot do. And I think that's proof positive of it. Again, I put forth of my principal supposition that Lando Norris is lucky to be only 9 points adrift of OJP by dint of a couple recent tracks that he goes well around, and by dint too as a function of OJP's mistake at the British Grand Prix brake test setting. Speaking of which, I want to show you this again. We went through this earlier, but this is important. Sometimes, again, let me put myself on the camera because I'm bringing myself to the truth pulpit here. You've heard me say on a gazillion occasions that I'm disappointed with my driver in Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton's performance this year. 14 rounds in the bag, not a podium in sight. Yeah, of course, he's dealing with a gazillion things. Yeah, he's acclimatising to the Scuderia Ferrari, the red car with the yellow badge and the black prancing Corsa top. He's acclimatising now to that circumstance. But yet and still, this is Lewis Hamilton. I don't want to extend him too much grace. You know, though, that on this channel, what we will never, ever do, not now, not ever, is sacrifice truth, value and objectivity at the altar of partisanship. Sometimes you got to bring yourself to the pulpit, the truth pulpit, and apologise. Here's what I mean. I put this forth to infinitely greater minds than I, as far as all things F1 are concerned, in Chezinho and Baxter today, and they told me that I was talking rubbish. Look at this performance. It's all over the shop. It's difficult, therefore, to draw a line of best fit. But yet and still, I'm not really happy with Lewis Hamilton's performance in qualifying as versus Charles Leclerc. But what else did we expect? Maybe just a bit better than this. Because on the occasions, particularly in H1, H2, when Charles Leclerc outperformed Sir Lewis Hamilton in terms of super times as a percentage of the whole lap time, Charles Leclerc has been clear, 0.6 in bloody, look at that, Bahrain, Japan, 0.4. These are big deltas, big quantums, and he is Sir Lewis Hamilton. However, put myself on the camera for this. This is important. Shez said, well, what's happened before Brazil? Before Belgium even, it looked like they brought an upgrade that didn't suit Sir Lewis. So why don't we, if we're playing normalising for anomaly games, why don't we normalise for Monaco and then see what that looks like there? So all I've done here in this, and again, I should take a step back and give you guys the appropriate context. All we're doing here is comparing the lap times in quali of Charles Leclerc and Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton. As far as percentage, super times, it's a percentage of the whole, aka if in China Sir Lewis Hamilton nails the quickest lap time, we're saying that he was 0.2 of a percentage of a whole quicker than Charles Leclerc, aka Charles Leclerc was 0.2 of a percent slower than the one they call Sir Lewis Hamilton at China in the sprint quali and the sprint race too. But how about this? All I've done here, the only difference, if I could get my bloody words out, the only difference between this and this is that you can see your boys taking out Monaco. I want to see a trend, a line of best fit. Since America, Lewis has been doing good. People have been putting forth the propaganda, aka the narrative, that Sir Lewis Hamilton's story as far as qualifying versus Charles Leclerc has been one of convergence. If you sack off Monaco and pretend like Monaco didn't exist, not a great performance from Sir Lewis. These metrics per the race show that between America, it was COTA, wasn't it? Between America all the way through to the British Grand Prix, that Sir Lewis has been going gangbusters. Sans his performance, and again an anomalous performance, some would say, at Monaco, ergo Sir Lewis Hamilton fans can rest and breathe, exhale, that Lewis is indeed travelling in the right direction, normalised for some poor performance at the Monaco Grand Prix. And if we discount what's happened with this recent Belgian Grand Prix upgrade, and by the way, here's hoping that Lewis, long may it continue for Lewis. I mean, he deserves it. I just want him to focus just a little bit on the weird and wacky world that is F1, bearing in mind, per Sir Lewis in his own words, he doesn't have many years left. And if he's going to win an 8th or 8th first for the one that they call Scuderia Ferrari, the red car with the yellow badge and black prancing horse at top, then they need to get moving. Do you know what I mean? 4th, 5th. Oh, and by the way, should have a conversation about these rules and regs. These rules and regs are getting on my tit. I will be honest with you. I have no confidence in that. I have no confidence in Liberty Media and the FIA's ability to institute for them in a way that is true and fair and can lead to some good racing. The oldest truism in F1 history has been this. Since the last 10-15 years, all they wanted to do is engage the rules in a way that could facilitate better racing. What is F1 if not Chariots of Fire and racing, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury? Why then have we got cars currently that are as wide as the Grand Canyon and as heavy as as the heaviest thing in bloody history? What are we doing here? These cars can't race, therefore, around Monaco, and they will need to do something. Now, they've said they're going to institute the 2026 rules with a view to amend for this to mitigate the non-race races that we've been seeing for the past 2 or 3 years. Lest we forget, Lando Norris was only able to hold Oscar Piastri behind him once he got his elbows out at the Hungaroring most recently. Oscar Piastri said, you know what, mate, I would have needed another 10 laps to overtake that fella, and I would have needed red labelled soft compound tyres. That's how difficult it is to follow, even in the McLaren aerodynamic efficiency settings, in dirty air. Fix for this then, Stefano and Mohammed Ben Sulayem. Oh, the humanity indeed, EasyG. It's not good enough, especially when you hear the feedback of all the drivers. Again, the context is this. 2026 will be the first time that F1 has amended both the power unit rules and the aerodynamic rules at the same time concurrently. Therefore, one of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to see God tier racing, or one or two teams will take a step on and it will be monotony central again, just like it was in 2014 with Mercedes split turbo hybrid settings. Then 2014 they won their first championship of the drivers and constructors, and they didn't stop winning until 2021, only when Maximilian Verstappen wrestled it away from then. I don't want to see that again for 2026, but it always happens. Oldest story in F1 history, and here's why that's important. Because I've already started testing these cars, these very unique brand of cars under the 2026 rule and reg spec in the simulator, and the feedback has been rubbish. Lance Stroll expressed his dissatisfaction for the regs, stating that he was not a fan of the direction in which F1 is travelling. Charles Leclerc, similarly, he shared his experience in a sim test, noting that the machine was not the most enjoyable. Fernando Alonso said similar, it's less performance than 2025 in 2026. Sebastian Vettel has chimed in, four-time world champion, saying that these cars in 2026 are not ideal for performance. Lando Norris chimed in, said about 2026, what I don't want to see is racing that's too artificial. I don't want things to be too fake. Lando Norris's words, not mine. Too scripted. I don't think that's correct. That's not motorsport, and that's not what I like. Touche, sir. It's going to get techie next year, I'm telling you. They need to make sure that there's decent racing. Now, they've talked about balance of power, not quite balance of power, but if there's a team or two that are sufficiently far behind as far as maximal velocity and therefore maximal output in BHP terms, then they would do stuff. They will enable them to test more potentially. They will level the playing field, because this is what the FIA is set to do. Set fair as far as their remit, institute the rules and regs in a way which is fair across related parties, but ensure that there's a levelling of sorts of the competitive landscape. I don't know. You let me know what you think in the chat about this. I'm not hot on these new rules and regs, particularly the active aero. When you look at Logan Sargent and his incident, Suzuka this year, FP1 going into turn 1, bloody DRS open. What? How is that a thing? He couldn't even talk about it afterwards. So the jury's still out as to whether he did that on purpose or whether it was a malfunction because of the car. Now, technical director of the FIA, Tom Biasis, has come in and he's responded to the driver's criticism of 2026 rules and regs, saying that they will change it again dependent on their feedback, that nothing at this point is set in stone. Tom Biasis continues, there is no intention of turning F1 into a chess match. Well, what about these rules and regs, mate? These rules and regs smack of chess match. You know who's told you that? Alex Albon has told you that. He said, Sir John Perry, you're a legend, absolute gangster of a different variety, and appreciate you out here gifting memberships. If you're a brand new member, get yourself over to the community tab and subscribe if you're that way inclined to the Discord. There will be a link over there. Sir John, absolute legend. Right, Alex Albon has said this, that there will be drivers, because of the power unit and the need to be efficient with its deployment, that this in 2026 F1 looks a little bit like Formula E, that it will be difficult to drive, that you'll have to be conscious and aware of your power unit and its deployment as far as its electric power at all bloody times. He said that some drivers they'll be able to lean into it because they're craftier. Devilment is a thing. Alex Albon continues. He says, I don't think it will always be purely about how quick the driver is around one particular corner. Let's say, like a driver who's quite smart, quote, and can understand the system and abuse the system, understand how it works and become quite efficient on it. They're going to find performance in that as well, much more than now. What are we doing here, therefore, chat? Is this Chariots of Fire? Is this F1 proper? Or is this the management championship? Nobody wants that. This is nonsense. Albon continues. It's difficult to drive. The load on the driver mentally is very high as well, he told planetf1.com in Belgium. I'm not a big fan of this, I'll be honest with you. It's too tactical already, so why are we going to make it even more tactical, more power unit dependent? if we're talking about clipping and deployment of energy. Feels a lot like 2010, 2012 ERS settings, and I don't want that. I don't think you want that either. So what are we doing, Stefano Dominicani et al? Oh, and by the way, if we're talking about Alex Albon, there's a lot of chatter about him and how he fits in to the automotive pugilistic Rubik's Cube that is Oracle Red Bull Racing and their drivers lineup in 2026 and beyond. We looked at the picture earlier, didn't we, about Max Verstappen on Toto's private yacht, laughing and joking, kikiing it with Susie Wolff and Kelly Piquet on board. I think that's significant, chat. Now listen, you can debate each and every single day of the week between now and the time when the cows come home around whether Max Verstappen will be a Mercedes driver in 2027. It's conjecture, it's barbershop talk, nobody knows for sure. But how can you, when you see that picture, knowing all the while that Toto, despite what anybody wants to tell you, Toto and Max are not friends, why then do they look so friendly aboard Toto the boy who cried wolf's yacht? Why, if Max isn't looking to go, on the proviso that Mercedes can build themselves a market leading car in 2026 to the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth, then who takes that seat, chat? That's the question that we're asking ourselves. Who will supersede Maximilian Verstappen in that Red Bull in 2027? Well, that depends. What contract are they prepared to give King George Russell of Kingsley Norfolk? Will it be a proper multi-year, 2+1, a 3+1, even like what he deserves? Or are they going to give him a 1+1 like it sounds, Toto the boy who cried wolf? Once now, George has spoken about the need for flexibility. W16 isn't a great car. Does that mean necessarily that next year's Mercedes won't be great also? Not necessarily, but George wants to bake into his contract a degree of flexibility also, just in case Mercedes don't provide him with a car capable of winning races and therefore championships. If, however, they do, as is rumoured, as people are saying that they because they've built the proper market leading power units, then George will want to be there. But then what about Kimi? Imagine Kimi Raikkonen voiding slip settings. Imagine Kimi Antonelli isn't doing what he needs to do. He's falling under the weight of pressure that comes with driving for the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth. Then what happens? Do they loan Kimi Antonelli out even to a Williams, let's say, and partner Max with George? Oh, the humanity. How blockbuster is that Macon, Eddie? That, ladies and gentlemen, of the F1 jury's chaos. And that's why I'm hoping, I don't want to root for the downfall of Kimi Antonelli, but if it could yield and give rise to a Max and George championship, both in Mercedes, inject it into my veins. Not, can you say 1989, 1990 Prost and Senna? That's what that would be. And a rising F1 tide floats all F1 boats as far as rivalry, particularly if they're as juicy as King George and Max Verstappen, both of whom are in their prime. George and Max as teamies would scare the entire field. I think it would scare everybody. F1 fans around the world watching, none of them can afford to DNF, to be honest. It's a good shout. Silent Owl says, I want to see Max and Charles in one team. I mean, go on and let's speak to that very quickly, because some people are referring to Charles as being trapped now, that he should be looking to get out of that Scuderia Ferrari contracts, because although he always aspired to win a championship for Scuderia Ferrari, surely at this point, for somebody as talented as Charles Leclerc, modern day Jean Alesi or modern day Gilles Villeneuve, some will say, surely his priority needs to be winning, not winning for Ferrari. They're two different things. And some might say that the latter is infinitely, exponentially more probable than the former. Make a decision, therefore, Charles Leclerc. Issa, that photo is incredible, eh? Issa, I cannot believe it. Oh, and by the way, since we're talking, there are people that are talking about Guenther Steiner as fake. Now, here's why this is important, because Guenther Steiner, for me, represents an inflection point, in F1 sports history. For the longest time, we were just a sport just a sport, full stop, new paragraph, nothing more, nothing less, nothing more complicated or simple. However, with the advent of Drive to Survive and its success, most of which Guenther Steiner in conjunction with Danny Rick was responsible for, with the advent of DTS, F1 completely changed as a sports franchise. Income, a whole new demographic, Gen Z, there are women, there are 18 to 35s, 40% of people that watch F1 as at August 2025 have come into the sport as a function of their experience with Netflix's Drive to Survive. The line that delineates between sport, a pure sports franchise, and endeavour, and sports entertainment has never been more blurry. Therefore, the reason why people watch Formula One is because of a Guenther, is because of a Danny Rick, because of the beef, the salaciousness between a Christian Horner and a Zach Brown. That it needs no translating. So it's not like I'm talking to my wife and having to explain to her what purple sectors means, why she can't decipher whether that's Lewis Hamilton in the yellow helmet or whether it's Nico Rosberg. It's very different, right? Those stories and narratives about people and rivalries and interactions need no translation. And that was the gift and the curse to a lesser extent of Drive to Survive and 2021, and being one of the only sports franchises globally, internationally, still to be putting on live events through COVID. That was the gift. Now we're in a different era, built on the shoulders, the not insubstantial shoulders of Guenther Steiner and the one that they called Danny Rick. However, now we have ourselves an inflection point proper, because how far is too far, chat? How much sports entertainment is too much sports entertainment? When did we start talking about WWE? I'd argue that we're not there quite yet, but some people look at Guenther Steiner as the downfall, the beginning of F1 ceasing to exist as a sports franchise and endeavour proper. And now you get the rumour about the Tech 3 MotoGP team. The team boss, Hervé Poncharal, he's had this to say. He said, you know what, Guenther Steiner is fake. All of this nonsense, because again, let me give you the context. There's been loads of rumour about Guenther Steiner trying to leverage financiers with a view to purchase a MotoGP team of the name of Tech 3. Hervé Poncharal owns Tech 3 and he's not having it. He's calling out Guenther Steiner as fake news. What is this dude talking about? Guenther Steiner loves attention. Everything he does, has always done, has been at the altar of attention seeking. Here's what he has to say. This is important, chat. He says he's not happy with the recent speculation, that it's nonsense, that it's just Guenther Steiner doing one of these, stirring the pot with a view to get more attention. He says, this Poncharal fella, head of Tech 3 MotoGP team, he says that Guenther Steiner always loves to be the centre of attention, hence the fake news. And this is where it gets techie, chat. I love me some Guenther Steiner. I really rate the dude. I think incidentally or otherwise, what he's done for F1 is god tier, gangbusters, blockbuster. But yet and still, there's a fine line, isn't there? Even as at August of 2025, between sports entertainment and sporting endeavour. And I'm not sure whether Guenther Steiner has crossed over that line. Of course, he's not even around F1 anymore. Not necessarily, or not as much as he used to be, being team principal of Haas back in the day. But I'm not sure whether Guenther, you let me know in the chat if we're going to have this argument. Is Guenther Steiner a good thing or a bad thing? And moreover, let me not pin this on Guenther. Is the sports entertainment thing, as at the time of writing, a good thing or a bad thing for F1? I would contend that but for Drive to Survive, my missus would never watch anything in F1. You could never twist her arm to watch a Grand Prix. She's not interested. It's too long. It's too boring. Too prosaic. You lot as F1 purists, die-hard vets, grey-bearded F1 fans, always like to talk in riddles. What are purple sectors? What is this quantum and this delta nonsense that you're talking about? Apex. What are you on about? Aerodynamic efficiency. It's a nonsense, and I agree with her. We're a community, a self-serving one unto ourselves, right? Sometimes you do leverage a cheeky, a pseudonym, Sometimes we do get too techie with the terminology, and I think in that sense, Drive to Survive, Netflix, Danny Rick, and so too Guenther Steiner are to be lauded. But when it's too far, chat, Guenther should try and get a NASCAR team. Good, because you can choose to ignore him if you don't like him. Ignoring the obvious doesn't make you enlightened. It makes you, you guys are jokers. It's techie, this. I think it's a conversation we're going to keep having, particularly as we're in this uncertain circumstance as far as Formula One. The rules and the regs, the competitive landscape or lack thereof. This is a 2-driver championship now. It is Oscar and it is Lando. There is nobody else, no Maximilian Verstappen to keep the McLaren boys honest, to hold their feet to the F1 flames. And that makes me feel apprehensive for Formula One going forward. If we're having a grown-up, honest conversation, I'm concerned for Formula One for the rest of 2025. And even more concerned yet and still for F1 in 2026. Maybe therefore in lean times, we as a community and as a sport need to lean into sports entertainment, lest we wish for the brand new Gen Z, the new fans, the 40% of women, the 40% of people that watch F1 now by dint of their experiences F1, lest we wish for them to go away, to dial out of the sport that we know and love and be the only ones in the room that speak to purple sectors. A bit of Max Verstappen, a bit of Sir Lewis Hamilton, talk to Scuderia Ferrari, some boys from Brackley and Brixworth. I think it's going to get techie for us over the next 12 months. I'm going to be honest with you. But then what do I know? I'm just a B-spec noddy F1 mind, you know what I mean? An accountant come B-spec F1 noddy mind and content creator. You guys have been legends each and every single time. I appreciate you and the community that we're building together, using which we have these conversations. Techie, very, very techie. Safak, as always, techier than techie things. So John, you're an absolute legend. And between now and next time, therefore, the prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.